All right, what's going on? Welcome back to another travel related video. This time I'm going to talk about what it was like for me to live in Ecuador. Again, these are my personal opinions and experiences. They are not necessarily the truth. It's just one person's thoughts. So I was in Ecuador for 2 months this year, from mid-April to mid-June 2022. I went to Montanita, which is I started off there. So that's a little beach town on the western coast. That's big for surfing, although I didn't surf there. Then I went to Baños, which is up in the mountains. Again, kind of a smaller little town as well. With it's in a valley, so there's these big mountains next to it. Then went to Tena, which is like on the western edge of the Amazon rainforest. So it's more tropical and jungly. And then finally finished in Cuenca, which is I was in the old town. It's like an old Spanish town, also up in the mountains in the Andes, I believe. And those were the four places I went before. Yeah, flew in and out of Guayaquil, which is I guess, bigger city in the south on is it on the ocean? I think so. In some harbor or something. What are the pros of my time in Ecuador? So one, it's very inexpensive compared to the U.S. Let's say they use U.S. dollars, which was interesting because I didn't expect that, and it's just reminded me of all the U.S. foreign policy stuff and how they outsource their inflation and with all the U.S. printing, and it was like a first-hand experience of seeing something like that, where like I could imagine how U.S. fiscal policy could affect a third country and a developing nation like Ecuador. Ecuador is very beautiful. It's very biodiverse. It almost felt like Grand Theft Auto, like a video game, because every hour the landscape would change from the beach to the mountains to the jungle. The scenery would almost like change within such a short span of time. It felt like Grand Theft Auto. You know how like when you drive and then after a while, just like the scenes just change. So it was pretty wild, and the people are very friendly. I really enjoyed meeting various people in Ecuador, and yeah, it was a good time. The cons, well, I wouldn't say it's really a con, but when we were on our bus from Montanita to Baños, Vicky got her phone stolen from her bag from the two guys in front of us, because she had left it like open, and then they somehow were able to grab it, and it was it's a memory now. I guess she was frustrated or sad at the time, and then she had my number as the emergency contact, so they kept like reaching out to me and trying to get me to help them unlock it, which I wouldn't do. I thought that was funny. And then so I guess there is some theft there, which you got to be careful about. Um, Again, that's just my personal experience. And indigenous protests. So again, this was more interesting than anything. Maybe a bit frustrating at the time, because our flights were in Guayaquil. We were in Cuenca, which is normally like, I want to say like a 3 hour drive. But then like a few days, maybe a week before our flight, the indigenous population started protesting rising like prices and food, gas, whatever it was. And again, I was just thinking, how much of this is their government, and how much of it is tied to the U.S. because they use U.S. dollars and inflation and all that stuff. But anyways, so they were protesting and blocking all the main roads, and so we had to take like a back roads through the mountains, bunch of different back roads. We encountered like 3 roadblocks, and then had to find ways around each of them. So it ended up taking like 13 hours, well into the morning. And at the time, it was like kind of frustrating because obviously it was a long ride, and uh, didn't get much sleep that night. And then the next day, also like with my flight being in the middle of the night, like so I just didn't have a good rest for a couple nights in a row. But at the end of the day, it's still just it was just a memory. So yes, and I understand that they need to have their voice heard. So I don't necessarily not against that specifically. Just that was our experience. My favorite memories from Ecuador were ayahuasca. So got to do that in Tena in with the Ecuadorian shaman. Had to walk like an hour because we walk slow. An hour into the jungle. They had a nice little spot. I think it's called Napusamai Ayahuasca Lodge. Uh, and I've written in on my Instagram and maybe in my book, my autobiography, about some of the realizations that I had from there. And yeah, it was a I'm really glad I got to do that. Another one was a BJJ tournament that I did in Cuenca. I heard about it like 2 days before. I decided, fuck it, why not? I was a little bit scared, but then I realized that's an indicator that I should probably do it. Ended up winning my weight division again. Like I was still doing the white belt competition, and I felt kind of bad. Although my first match was not easy, and in Cuenca it's pretty high altitude, and so I wasn't fully acclimated, but not making excuses. Um, so it's just confirmation maybe that it would be nice to get promoted, which hopefully is happening next week. And another funny memory was working with Selena. So we stayed in Selena, which is like it's a chain of hotels slash hostels, and it's a little bit more upscale. They have like nice working spaces, and you know it's a nice brand, and they're in a lot of different places. And so we stayed in the Selena in Montanita, and then after Banos, we reached out to see if we could do like a cooperation with Tena and Cuenca to stay at Selena in exchange for like offering our services and rituals and activities. And so that's what we did. And we ended up like not hosting anything because we had the plan and we submitted it and all that. It's just that there was no interest, and we weren't super proactive in promoting them. And so I kind of just like showed up to mine, and after 15 minutes of nobody coming, I was like, all right, fuck it, and then left. But then ended up getting to stay for free in those 2 locations. So that's the beauty of large corporations. Sometimes like it's not your compensation is not necessarily tied to productivity, which is different than the entrepreneurial game. And so it's nice just to be in that space again for a little bit, just to be like just chilling, getting compensated in the way of getting free housing, but not really having to do a lot of work. And it seemed like they didn't really care either. Like, so I guess from my culture or from my background, and maybe being from Western country as well, I feel like I needed to pay my dues and do the work. But it seemed like their managers were just like, whatever, like just chill out. This is Latin America, so that was nice too. Overall, I would give it Ecuador a rating of 8 out of 10. Yeah, maybe I wasn't there long enough. Probably would have experienced a lot more if I had the opportunity. I think there's probably a lot of similarities to Peru, which is a top spot on my list in the future. And yeah, that's mostly it. Again, let me know what other questions or how I could make this more interesting or more entertaining. I should probably incorporate more jokes into my videos. I'm figuring that out as I go along. So, anyways, thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.